Hey friends, welcome to this episode of Compassion and Courage, Conversations in Healthcare. I'm Marcus Engel, and this is the podcast where I teach compassionate communication, provide perspective, and inspire resilience. And today, oh my gosh, how special is this? I am so deeply touched and honored and excited to share with you the one and only Barb. Now, before I say too much about Barb, as so many of you already know, Barb is the nurse from my story. Barb took such great care of me when I was on the 7,400th floor of Barnes Hospital way back in the day. And today, she, through her example, is inspiring tens of thousands of student nurses every year. And through her example in my keynote is inspiring tens of thousands more of live audience members every year. And today I am just so incredibly touched that she has chosen to spend some time with us here on the podcast. So Barb, welcome to Compassion and Courage. Thank you for being with me. How does it feel to be on your very first podcast?
Oh, this is fun.
This is
Maybe
fun.
it's the start of a new career for me. Who knows?
That's right. That's right. After how many years of nursing? 42?
I had 42, and yes, when I had to
42 years of
retire.
nursing it.
Yes.
So I'm here today in my studio. Where are you today?
I'm in my dining area, that I call it, in my home in St. Louis, where I have lived since, I guess a year after Donna and I got married. We bought this house, and it's where I raised my boys and where I would take my naps before I went to work, and I've always been here. This is home.
This is home. Good.
This is
South
home.
County, St. Louis.
That's right.
Awesome. So take us back to like you could take us back as far as you'd like to go, but I would love to hear who Barb was before she ever heard of this Marcus Engel kid. And then maybe who you were during that time of taking
Okay.
care of me and so on and afterwards too. So where would you like to start your story?
I'll start it when, my parents, especially my mom, her mother died when she was 2, and she was a social worker in the tenements of Chicago, Sarah. And my mother always encouraged me to go into nursing, and I had 2 choices, nursing and being a teacher. So I was struggling with that, and I was about 16 years old, and my grandmother had given me a jar of antique beads, and they fell, and they went all over my bedroom, and my first thing out of my mouth was words that I probably should have been saying at any age, let alone 16. And my dad, who was the kindest man, he was so kind, walked in the room, and I thought, Daddy's going to really get after me. And he said, I have a question for you. How are you going to be in front of a class full of kids and something goes wrong and you're not going to swear like a sailor? And that moment, that exact moment, I thought, I'll be a nurse.
That was the moment.
That was the moment.
That was the moment.
I
when you
even
knew you
know
would be
what
a
I
nurse.
was wearing, and I still remember that from time to time. And he was a Navy corpsman, so he was very much into medicine, and I think a lot of his love for that and caring for others, because he worked in a hospital in Oakland, California throughout the Korean War, and took care of sailors and Marines who had been injured in the war, and found that was he was so proud of that, and he was so proud that he was going to be buried with all these men when he passed away. He's in Jefferson Barracks, but he's about a mile from me now forever, so that's quite nice.
So you had an example from both of your parents then
I tell you,
about
yes, very much so, and very encouraging, very supportive throughout my entire career. And I think they were extremely proud to say that they had a daughter that was a nurse. And I tried to live up to their expectations, but also it was how I was raised, to care for others. So I went to Deaconess. I applied at several places, but I really wanted a hospital-based program. And back in the 60s and 70s, that's what they had. Almost every hospital in St. Louis had a program. And I went to Deaconess because actually they were the longest. They were 33, 36 months. And I think we were off 10 weeks the entire 3 years that I was there. It became very instrumental because my roommate ended up marrying my brother. So we ended up with 2 nurses in the family, but she went to a different focus. She was a pediatric nurse at Children's for almost as long as I was in my position. I couldn't do kids. I just couldn't do kids. And she was phenomenal at it.
So you came out of nursing school and immediately went to work.
I had a job before I even graduated. I don't know why I went to Barnes. Deaconess was a very conservative hospital, and I wanted something a little more exciting where I would learn, and I chose the right place. I went to Barnes Hospital, which is now Barnes Jewish Hospital, and I was actually hired before I even graduated. I think I was hired in February, and I chose ENT, ear, nose, and throat. I'm not sure why. And I really didn't know that much about the specialty. They gave me a choice wherever I wanted to go. And I knew I didn't want to do OBGYN, and I wanted something very specific. So I went to ENT, and I started June 6, 1977 was my first day. And
June 6, 1977, first day on the job.
My last day on the job was April 14th or 15th, depending if I went in the evening, and the next day it was the 15th. And it was my last day. I wasn't planning on that, and that was 2019. But my back fell apart. I had back surgery, and that was it. I barely made it to the car that morning and never went back. I never could go back. So not too many people stay in one position for 42 years. And it wasn't because of a lack of not wanting to know new things, because what our surgeons were doing when I left wasn't even thought about when I had started. The practice in that specialty had changed and evolved so much, and so many times I was luckily on the front end of that, caring for patients that maybe 3 months prior weren't going to have any choices, but now they do. So it was very fulfilling to be part of that. And I like to remind myself that no one, and probably it won't ever happen again, no one had a continuous tenure on that specialty at Barnes Hospital longer than me. I was the grandma. No one did. So
no one.
And
no
I don't
one
think it's ever going to happen again. I don't know. But
with the way that the labor market is today, you're probably right.
There's so many more. Well, there was a lot of choices back then, but it wasn't. I feel like every year I was learning something and open to change. I did not want to be one of those people that was, well, we're not. That's not going to work, because so many things were different by the time I left and when we first started that it was hard to even imagine the changes. And it was fun to see the changes. And I took, when I was recovering from surgery, I wrote down as many of the changes as I could think of that happened from the time I started to the time I ended. And I wish I had that list, but it was a lot of incidental things.
What were some of the biggest changes?
One of the biggest changes was, we worked in not only with what you had with facial reconstructions and everything, but head and neck cancer. And one of the things that was so predominant to me was that in the early years, if somebody had jaw cancer or something, or tongue cancer even, they would have to remove a good part of their tongue, and these people wouldn't go out of their house anymore. I mean, they couldn't speak. They were very disfigured. And by the time I left, if you had tongue cancer, it wasn't good, but they could rebuild your tongue where you could speak and you could eat. And I think of those people from the late 70s and the early 80s, and some of them went home and never left their home again. Their whole life, their quality of life was removed. And the wizards that we have in our surgeons at BJC, it's unbelievable what they can do. So that's one major difference. And I had a patient that did come in a couple years before I left, and he had what we call a jaw neck dissection. And seriously, the left side of his face was totally sunken in because he had no jawbone, because back then they had tried all sorts of things, but it didn't work for him. And I made sure that all the nurses saw this is what we dealt with in the 70s and 80s. You know, this gentleman had enough tenacity to keep going, and it was amazing. But yeah,
a lot of changes over those years,
and just the way nurses practiced too. You know, we did not have aides. We did what was called total patient care, which I loved. And as nurse assistants came in, and we utilized those more and more because of the shortage of nurses, it was hard for me to let go of some of the tasks that I took my own vital signs. You know, I was busy all the time because I probably wasn't utilizing or delegating as well as I should have been in the last couple of years, but that's okay. I like being in the patient's room, so.
And I have to think that, much like with me, that your patients appreciated your presence as well.
I hope so, but you know, I appreciated theirs as well. I made a point of trying to find out who they really were, because they weren't somebody in there who had been in a car accident or who had head and neck cancer. They had another life. And I would try to find out, you know, where they grew up or what kind of work they would do, and took an interest in them. Plus, it helped me remember who was who and maybe what their needs would be, just to get to know people.
I know you don't see it as much today with the time, but I remember that you said the different types of people that you would take care of, and how many times you took care of survivors of the Holocaust.
Two of my most favorite people to take care of demographic-wise was the Holocaust victims or survivors. And I had a true appreciation for, they went all these years and then they come in and they're dependent upon me after all they've been through. And I would try to, you know, I was honored to take care of them. And the other group who I really always got a kick out of were the elderly African American women who had maybe come up to St. Louis when they were 13 or 14 years old because their family sent them up to marry somebody. And that happened a lot. And they were tiny and frail, but their families were so strong. And it reminded me the impact that this little lady, who they always had to have their purse in their bed with them, and all that was in there was Tic Tacs and a hanky. That's all that was in their purse, but they had to have their purse. And I just truly appreciated the family units those were, and what these women probably had gone through. You know, 14, 15 years old. I think the youngest was 13 when I asked her, well, how old were you when you got married? 13. It's like unbelievable.
Wow.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, we don't think about that in today's day and age.
No.
So let's go back to about the time that we met then. You've got probably 15 years or so in at Barnes Hospital at that time, working in head and neck. And then, I don't know, you take me back. I know that you heard about me pretty soon after I got to the hospital. It was interesting
because of the 3 years before you came in, I was in management on the same division that I worked, and I was not cut out to be that. I mean, I appreciate what the managers do, but I can't do it. And it took me away from the bedside, which I really think was the biggest problem of it all. And I was finally able to get away from that, and I went to night shift because I didn't want to interact with people that I had worked with management wise, and night shift was where you take care of people. I mean, there's nobody there. You're everybody. You're housekeeping. You're dispatch. You're everybody at night. So I had heard in the middle of the night, because we shared at that time, there was an ENT floor, and then the other half of that building on that floor was the ophthalmology unit, and it has since been more outpatient wise. But I was down talking to the nurses on that division, and the resident, a young lady, and I don't remember her name, came up, and she was just rattled. She was a doctor, came up from the emergency room just rattled, and sat down. She said, "Oh, I'm just sick. And we were like, "What's wrong?" "Well, this young man came in with a car accident, and I don't think he's ever going to see again." And I said, "How old is he?" And she says, "I don't know, 17, 18 years old." Well, I had a son at that time that was about 15 or 16, and I lost an eye as a child from a trauma. But, it's not a big deal for me. I got another eye. It's never been an issue. And all I could think of is, oh, my goodness, he's not going to see again. And immediately I felt a connection to you. So the next night I come in, and they say, "You're getting a transfer from the other unit, the surgical trauma unit. It's coming down here." And I knew immediately who it was. They didn't even tell me it was you, and I knew it was you. And that was the start of me taking care of you. I think coupled with the fact that I was used to being around teenage boys, because, let's see, that was in October, and I was still every Friday night feeding my son's high school football team at the house. So I had an affinity for 16, 17, 18, 19-year-old young men. And I kind of understood there was a lot more there than just an injury. There was maybe plans that you had made that were going to change. And the parents, their dreams, were they shattered? Maybe at the time, but, eventually it would be okay. But that's where we started. Now, you had a lot of injuries. You just didn't have facial injuries. You had, broken hip, and you were bruised from head to toe, and there was a lot to contend with.
Yeah.
And that's right up my alley. I'll take a trach any day. But what really, I would take care of you every single time I was on. And there was one or two other nurses that would take care of you. But you were difficult. I'm going to be honest with you. You were difficult. It was a difficult situation. It was very hard to understand the special needs that maybe you had that others didn't have. And would all the nurses want to fight to take care of you? I want to tell you, not at that time. There were some that found it just too hard to take care of you, or did not know how to communicate with you. And I always felt that I could communicate with you a little bit. Sometimes I was a nurse. Sometimes when Nancy wasn't there, I was your mom. But it wasn't just the physical things I was worried about, because those were going to heal. It was how you were going to adapt to not having vision, and how your life was going to proceed. And I think I understood a little bit just from losing partial sight, but I was very concerned how you were going to adapt to that.
So you got to watch some of those initial adaptations. Mm-hmm. And I feel like part of the reason that I was able to recover so quickly was because I had you. When we talk about staffing, you alluded to it, and I'll make no bones about it. I was not a good patient, but I was also an extremely medically fragile and complicated patient, not to mention the whole communication issue of being trached and
You
in
couldn't
constant
speak.
pain and
You
such.
couldn't.
Right.
You couldn't
Yeah.
speak, and I made a point to make sure I saved all the notes that you wrote. Not for you for a scrapbook or anything down the future, but for your mom and dad. So that they knew where your mindset was when they weren't there. That was very important. And I remember one day I came in and I had a stack of them and they were gone. And I said, "Were Marcus's parents here?" "No, I think they're coming tomorrow." And I said, "What happened to his notes?" "Oh, I cleaned up. I threw them all away." I was furious. I bet I almost lost my job over that. I mean, I went out there. I said, "You don't understand." "Well, it's just there wasn't like anything special." I said, those were his feelings, his thoughts. They needed to be saved. And from then on, nobody threw them away because that was just wrong in my opinion. But that's okay. I mean, she cleaned up the room.
And that
It
was the
was really
first
nice.
couple of that was the first couple of weeks of hospitalization when I was trached. And then once I got my voice,
Right.
I don't know
Right.
if that was necessarily a good thing for the staff either.
Well, I don't ever remember it being a problem. I mean, you know, it's like you had your own routine of how you wanted things done, and I saw that with my Mark when he was ill. This had to be right here. But it was a little different for you because you needed him in certain spots so you knew where they were. But you had your rituals when it was time to get you ready to go to sleep for the night. And I knew that was going to take a good 45 minutes, and that's fine. I would make sure everything was set with my other people and tell my backup, answer my lights. I'm going to be in with Marcus, and it'll be a while. And that was fine. It's just you have to not do what was on my schedule. I was on your schedule. And I think that's a real important part when you're trying to connect with somebody and make sure. And luckily, well, not luckily, but you were there a long time and we had our own set routine. And I remember one night I came in and you said, "I don't even know who took care of you the night before. She didn't know how to do it." I said, "That's okay. That's all right." But I think back on those days when you were initially in the hospital and you were concerned about your friends that were in the accident, and which I thought was a little remarkable because, there was so much wrong with you and you were the one that got the brunt of everything. But you were trying. You were trying. You had that dog and we put the watch on him, I remember. And your watchdog. I remember doing that. But I also
And
remember
I tell
you.
that story across the country
Yes.
to
Yeah.
lots and lots of audiences
I mean,
that I
we
say
tried
to,
it on the bed frame. We tried it. And I said, "Oh, let's just make it a watchdog." Because that was always there. I don't know who sent you that dog. Do you still have it?
I do. I
Oh,
do. And
wow.
the young lady who gave me that dog also became a nurse.
Really?
And then, yeah, and sadly last summer died suddenly, just
Oh, I'm so
massive heart failure.
sorry. I'm so
And
sorry.
yeah, 45 years old. And
Oh,
so, it was special to me because of my hospitalization and the watch. But,
but it made
today it's a
you,
memento
it's
for.
important that you have some sense of autonomy. You have to, I had a wonderful nursing instructor who was loony, as some nursing instructors are. But Mrs. Turner was real big on Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And she kept saying, if you can make them feel safe and secure, that you've met their first need and they can progress on. And I think that was my goal with all my patients, that they felt safe and secure. And that watchdog allowed you to jump a couple needs and have some autonomy. You didn't have to ask anybody because it was a talking watch, if I remember right.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And yeah, you didn't have to ask anybody what time it was. You had your
It
watchdog
was
to
my
do that.
first way of having. It was my first way of having any real
Independence,
independence,
right?
and you helped me achieve that. I always
Right.
say that Barb was at least partially responsible for the beginning of my rehab into blindness.
Yeah. I asked you one
Yeah.
day, I said, how is it not being able to see? And you said, I think I can do it. It's not that bad. Because, to have that taken away from you and to say that while you're still very acutely ill, I thought was remarkable. I thought he's going to be okay. He's going to be okay. But I got to the point where maybe I was too protective of you. Nobody was taking care of you but me, and they knew that. And I remember you came in the hospital about a year later, and they put you on another floor.
Hmm.
Do you remember that?
Yes, and I raised hell.
Yes. They
I did not want to be on
they
another
they
floor. I need Barb.
called down. Can you come up and talk to him? Because we had no rooms, and really, I don't know why you were in it, but it had to be for something for what we were doing. And we eventually got you down on our floor, but they wanted you in a room by yourself, and they didn't have you in a room by yourself. And yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So
messy stuff.
I became probably too protective of you. I do know that the day that the eye doctors came to see you in the ICU. I don't know if you recall that. And you were
Don't.
very upset. And we were all upset. And there was somebody that came in, a young girl that just wanted to stop in and see you. And we were like, no, the other nurse that I was in there with was like, no, nobody can come see him right now. And I don't know if she ever came back up, but that was Jenny, believe it or not.
Oh, that was
But we
just.
couldn't let anybody in at that time because
Oh wow.
it was not. But now I think back, maybe we should have let her. But I think she came back, if I remember right.
I have, yeah, because I tell the story that I didn't know anything about Jenny for 20 years, and I believe that that's true. I never knew her last name, but I do sort of remember a day or two before I was discharged
Her coming
that
up.
she came to the room and at least said, "Hey, I was with you in the ER," and I remembered her, but that was
Well,
it.
this is
Then
early.
again,
This is
nothing
like
for.
just you early in we had a mini ICU unit on our floor for ENT and head and neck patients, and you had only been in there a couple days, and I think it was her. Now that I look back, but we were like, oh, we were gatekeepers. Nope, nope, no more doctors right now. Nope, nope, nope. He's had enough for the day.
So that kind of brings up a question because I feel like sometimes I hear a sentiment that you just expressed there from student nurses and from other nurses who say, I don't allow myself to get close to my patients because I've had a patient that I was close to that passed away, and I cannot take that kind of heart sickness. What's your advice to nurses who would say that?
I do think you have to. I remember instances of patients. I remember some patients' names. Maybe out of 42 years, maybe 3 patients' names I know. I just have, I early developed a thing where that was my life there, and then I had a life at home. But I brought you home with me. that didn't happen with you. My boys knew about you long before you knew about them. Long, they knew immediately. It's hard to not get close to folks, especially if they're in there for a long time. But sometimes if you know what the dynamics are, if you're taking care of a terminally ill cancer patient, you know you're going to lose them. And your focus isn't necessarily on keeping them alive, but giving them the dignity that they need when they leave this life. I've often wondered how somebody can live to be 80, 85 years old and then come in the hospital and go through a bunch of people But when I go in there, I find them I'm the one that finds them, that they have left us. And I just think, that's kind of special. That's kind of special. They waited all these years, and here I am. And that happened several times. Several times. You just have to.
Beautiful.
You just have to develop a. I've had patients come up to me in the grocery store or whatever, and I pretend like I know who they are, but oh my heavens, I'm just really bad on keeping names, and
Right.
I think it was self-protecting. I think that's why I was able to last as long as I was. And
you made a great statement there, that you were able to separate that this is work, and when I go home at night, this is family time.
Right.
This is a time with my
Right.
husband and my boys, and
Right.
this is our family
Right.
time.
Right.
And until you get some 18-year-old blind kid that comes in your ICU.
And that's right. And by the time you left, you were my kid. I mean,
Yeah.
nobody was messing. Nobody was taking care of you but me, and nobody was going to do something, And they even had it. Well, we'll wait. Barb will be here tomorrow, and she can handle that with him, or whatever it might be.
Pass the buck until Barb gets
That's
here.
right. That's right. That's right. So I
spent. I was gonna say I spent about 6 weeks or so
Yes.
then under your care.
Well, from
and
yes,
yeah, early October till
to Thanksgiving Day.
And I'm not, obviously I'm not a nurse. I've never been a caregiver of any sort. But what you said about helping patients feel safe and secure. When I was ready to leave the hospital, the biggest thing I was worried about was, am I going to be safe? Right? The hospital, It didn't feel like home,
Right.
but it did feel safe. So
Right.
at least for me, that was mission accomplished. And if we can make patients feel safe, my goodness, like you said, it opens the door for the healing process to begin.
Exactly, and when you don't feel safe and secure and protected, it's a sense of survival at that point. You can't deal with anything else that comes down the line. I mean, I know that from taking care of patients, from taking care of you. I really know it everything I learned in nursing, when it came time for my son who was sick, all those skills or whatever I always say, that's what it was meant for. So I could take care of Mark. And he was safe and secure. I was not during that time, of course, with him. I always felt that I was safe and secure with my patients and my job and my marriage and my family and my children until one of them became terminally ill. And when I was in that point, I was no longer a nurse. I was a mom losing her kid. So I understand what it's to feel like to be on that thin ice and not knowing, okay, am I going to be able to do this? Am I going to survive when this is over? What's life going to be like for me? It's going to be totally different. And it's important. And now when I look back, I think that's how I practice my career, my job, my profession was. If they're safe, they're okay. That dressing change will be okay in an hour from now. Are they safe and good right now? And that was how I tried to take care of my people. Because if they were safe, they were going to survive, and we could progress to the next step.
So you took care of me, and it was what? That was in '93, and what year did your son Mark first get sick?
Well, he always, this kid would, if he scratched his face outside, he'd come in and stand in our bedroom, look in the mirror and cry. We always said he had imaginitis. This hurt, that hurt. He broke his ankle playing doing that football play. Whatever, Mark, whatever. So I had told, just to give a little background, when my older son, he's 3 years older than Marky, 4 years. When John turned 13, I thought, I need to talk to him about growing up and all that stuff with puberty. And what do I tell a boy? Because I had two sisters. I had an older brother, but I didn't know what to tell him. So I got out my books and I thought, I'm going to talk to him about testicular cancer and testicular self-exam. Well, my son John is a school district administrator. And so he was all into learning whatever he had to learn. And it was very interesting. And okay, Mom, that's fine. So when Mark got to be 13, I did the same thing, but I did it a little bit different. I had a shower card, and I had my books, and he came in and I said, before you do anything, before you get cleaned up to go out for your birthday dinner, I want to talk to you about something. And he thought I was going to talk to him about drugs. That's what he told me. And I said, well, I want to show you this. And I explained this to your brother when he was 13. And he took one look at it and he said, I'm not talking to you about my balls. That's what he said to me. And he got up and left. Okay, so 7 years later, I was like his secretary. He's, can you make this appointment for me? Can you do this for me? And he was going to college here in town, but he was also working. And he said to me, you need to make a doctor's appointment for me. I'm like, you're going to be 21. I was thinking this. You're going to be 21 in about 3 months. You can make your own doctor's appointment. But I said, why? And he said, well, I found a lump. And I'm like, oh, here we go. You know, imaginitis kicking in. And I said, where? He said, on my testicle. And I thought, well, you don't want me to look at it. That's what I told him. I said, you call our doctor and make an appointment about that. And he said, well, I will tomorrow. He says, I got to go to work. And he left. And when he left, I sat on the floor of the kitchen and cried. I knew he had cancer. I knew it was. And I didn't even tell my husband for, probably 2 weeks. And Mark went into the doctor, and they did an ultrasound, and it ended up he did not have testicular cancer. His cancer was located near that area. He had epidermal cancer, and it was extremely rare, and he had just turned 21, and I had read about it and knew that he wasn't going to survive it. And he went through big chemo, and that was in 2004. And that was a difficult year. I also lost my dad that year, and it was just a very hard year. And then he got better, and he moved to Memphis, and he opened a couple golf stores, and he lived the life that he should be living, and was happy. But I was always waiting for the other shoe to drop. I just knew it would, because I had read about this rare cancer, and nobody survived it. And it came back with a vengeance, and we lost him in 2007. But I got to tell him goodbye. He got me ready for when he left. He made his own decisions. He knew things weren't going to get any better and decided to stop chemo, which he didn't know, but his oncologist already said he wasn't going to give him anymore. It was not going to help him. And I'm in a group that I meet occasionally. We haven't for a while. But we call ourselves Angel Moms. And unfortunately, the other people in the group, Mark knew all the kids. They were all kids that he went to high school with. One of them died of cancer. One was suicide. 2 were killed in a car accident. Another had cerebral palsy. And the moms get together once in a while just to kind of support each other. I am the only one that got to say goodbye and get ready. And I think that in itself is a blessing. So has it been easy? I cry every day. Every day I cry that he's not here. But it's okay. I got to be his mom. Nobody else did. And I know he's looking out for me. So.
Thank you for sharing that. One of the questions that I always ask guests, and I feel like this would be the appropriate time, is a question that I actually, all of my pre-meds, they write their first paper of the semester, asking them to relay a story when a time that they have been there for someone else, or a time that someone else has been there for them. Do you have a story about who was there for you during Mark's illness and passing that you'd care to share?
You know, you want your child to be liked by his friends. You want him to have, just to be happy. And I have to say that those boys that I fed every Friday night for so many years sustained me through that, because they came from all over the country when their team captain was sick. And that has helped me so much. But probably the one person that helped me the most through that, and I'm not disregarding my husband or my family, was Mark himself. And I told him, it was just me. He had visitors all day long, and his high school football coach was up there, and just visitors all day long. And I said, well, I think, and he seemed happy. I said, I think I'll go home tonight. And he's, no, you have to stay here. I used to sleep in the shower in his, believe it or not, in his hospital room, because he said I made too much noise when I slept, that I snored or whatever. So I would go in there. I wanted him to rest, so I would literally sleep in the shower. And I thought, okay. And he says, you have to stay tonight. And I said, okay, I guess I will. And then I saw him rubbing his eyes, and I said, do you have a headache? And he started to cry. And I said, what's wrong? He said, I can't do this anymore. I'm done. He said, I thought I could beat it, but I can't. And I knew he was right. And, I knew he was right. And I said, Mark, this isn't what I wanted for you. And he said, I'm going to see the face of God, Mom. Why don't you want that for me? He says, I'm going to see him. And I have a very strong faith. But, I would take him to church and what have you, but boy, it hit home. And he's like, you have to get ready for this. He said, you need to find something to do. You need to find a hobby, which I really didn't. My hobby was my boys. You need to find something that you can do. That, because I was embroidering just quilt blocks for no reason at all, just to have something to do with my hand. He says, make a quilt out of that thing you keep sewing on. He said, you and Dad need to take trips. He said, I will always be there. If you turn around fast enough, you'll see me. And that's what I needed to know, that I would have him forever. And he probably is the person that helped me the most. Not only with going on, I had 2 grandchildren. He said, the little boys are going to need you. John's needs you. Dad really needs you. You're going to have to help Dad with this. And I'm like, I will. He says, well, this is really hard for Dad. And I remember thinking, what the hell? It's hard for me too.
Me too.
It's hard for your dad. So, I thought about that. Who has helped me? And there's been an awful lot of people that have been nice. Helping and nice, I have figured out, are 2 separate things. Mm-hmm. I think when you help somebody, you are being nice, but there's nice things that you can do to somebody to make their day go easier, and just remind them that they're special people. But to really emotionally help somebody, I know it was Mark. I know it was him.
You have told me before that, okay, so one of the hardest parts of my experience is thinking about what my mom and dad went through.
Oh.
And
Your parents, I know you think they're great and you love them, but I have the utmost respect for both of them. They were dealt a blow that, it was hard for the professionals at the hospital to deal with. And to know that you were their only son, and not that one son is dispensable from the other, I can tell you that much. I can still see your mom coming in the room and standing in the corner and just getting her whatever together to approach you and to deal with. She would read you the cards people sent you, and tears would just roll down her face, but her voice was just as strong. You couldn't see the tears. I could. I can't tell you how many times I went outside the room because it was like, oh man, this is horrible. I feel so bad Nancy's going through this. And when my Mark got sick, there's one person I channeled, and it was her. I had thought a couple times of calling her, but I didn't. I just needed to remember how strong they were and how committed, no matter how their son turned out, that they were okay with it. This was their boy, and fabulous people your parents are. Fabulous.
You took care of me, but I cannot express enough gratitude for taking care of them.
I can't express what they did for me either. They're very, you know what God said, okay, Marcus, I'm going to give you a bad way to go sometime during your life, but I'm going to give you stellar parents, and you wouldn't want to trade for either or. I mean, they're
That's
great.
The truth.
Mm-hmm.
And John and Mark wouldn't either.
No, I would hope not. Marky told me once, after I had helped him with his morning routine after we brought him home with hospice, he said, Mama, you know what? You are a really good nurse. It was one of the highest compliments I had.
Oh.
And the thing that keeps me going with what he told me and what I tried to do and what he wanted to do, and you dedicating your book, I'm Here, to Mark, you have no idea what that does for me. Every day, I know that people are looking at that, or you're talking about him, and that's what parents want for their kids. They want them to be valued. And I feel, as short as Mark's life was, I know his friends valued him, but you don't know how helpful it is that how you valued him. And I have told you the story about when he moved to Memphis and you were going to speak there, and you finally were going to meet, finally. Uh-huh. And he says, well, Mom, what should I do with Marcus? I said, well, and Mark lived on a golf course. I said, take him golfing. He can golf. You just have to spot.
And I had just begun,
yeah.
Within a year or two
and he
before
said,
that.
really? And I said,
golf.
yeah, he just needs a spotter, and he says, that's not going to happen. And I'm like, why? You can do that. He said, Mom, what kind of person would I be if I beat a blind guy golfing? And I didn't say anything. And he says, and even more so, what kind of golfer would I be if a blind guy beat me? So, typical golf star. I thought it was pretty funny.
There you go.
I don't know if he was more concerned about you losing or him. And I think it was him losing. But unfortunately, things came up and it didn't work out anyway. But
I so wish I would have had the opportunity to meet him and play around.
I've told you, you two are almost identical in your humor and your commitment to things and what have you. Yeah.
Okay, so before I cry anymore, let me hit you with a couple of like rapid fire questions that I ask every guest. How's that sound? Yeah, you take all the drinks you want. All right, so rapid fire question number 1. If you were stranded on a desert island and yet you had the ability to have one piece of art with you, what would that be? A film, a book, sculpture, piece of visual art?
I probably would have a Bible because it's full of stories, it's full of advice. There's some funny things in there, there's a lot of sad things in there. I think it would keep me entertained and informed and give me some hope about things.
Good stuff.
I think that. I'm not a big Bible thumper, but I think that's probably what I would. It would be my guidebook.
If nothing else, you got thousands of pages
That's
to
right.
read through. You'll never get bored.
Exactly. Because I tend to read, especially if I'm reading a novel, because I prefer to read nonfiction biographies, memoirs, to find out how people have overcome whatever. But if I read mysteries, I'll get halfway through and then skip and go to the end. So you can't do that with the Bible. So
I always love our conversations because we get to catch up on what the other is reading and has read lately.
Mm-hmm. So what have you read lately?
Typical, philosophy kind of stuff that I'm usually reading.
Oh, that's too deep for me. That's way too deep for me. Now, I read Ron Howard's book this week, the one he wrote with his brother, because I remember when he was Opie, so
Sure,
we're about the same age, so it was interesting.
Okay, so rapid fire question number 2 then.
Okay.
If you could spend the day being and living the life of any fictional character, who would that be and why?
Well, that's a stumper. Fictional character. I think Mary Poppins. That would be fun.
Mary Poppins. Mm-hmm. That's a great answer.
I think Mary Poppins. She could sing, and people liked her, and she had this aura of, there's something else about her, but we can't put our finger on it. So I think that might be fun.
That sounds perfect. And then lastly, if you had the ear of the world, if you had the world's largest billboard, what message would you like to convey to humanity?
Just take a deep breath and relax and look at the bigger picture, because don't miss out on what's happening right now. Build on that. Take what you remember and try to figure out just what you can do to just stay calm and relax, because it doesn't matter in the end. All the problems, any money problems, housework problems, relationship problems, they're not going to mean anything. I mean, I used to fret over, when I was in management, these quarterly reports, and I had to figure out this and figure out things that I really didn't even understand. And you know what? Nobody cares about that today. Who cares? It had no bearing on anything, on how anybody felt, other than making stress for me. So, like who said don't stress the...
Don't sweat the small stuff,
yes.
And it's all small stuff.
That's right. That's exactly right.
It's a pretty good motto to go by.
Right.
Well, Barb, I cannot thank you enough, as always, not only for taking care of me, but for truly being the person that I talk about in my books and on stage. People ask, well, Barb can't really be that compassionate of a person. She can't really have had that much time to spend with you. Yes. Yeah, yes, you are the real deal, the quintessential nurse. And thank you for being mine. Thank you for being the nurse to, thousands and thousands of patients over the years.
Yes, thousands.
And again, thank you so much.
Well, I don't think I'm any different than any of the people that come to your talks or read your books, or the nursing students who who have so much desire to be out there. I'm no different than anybody else. I just had a very spectacular 18-year-old boy come under my care at one time who happened to write books later. And I'm no different than anybody else, really.
I tell you what, I don't know if I can agree with that.
Okay.
Because I lived through a lot of nurses, and I know that you are special, and it's not just me that knows it. The world knows it. When I go to like student nursing conventions to talk, and there are students there who have printed up shirts that say, "I want to be a Barb."
Oh my goodness. I'd love to have one of those.
Yeah, I'd love to have one too. I just sit there thinking that example is what really reinforces so many young people's desire to get into nursing.
And you know what? It's a
that's the
tough
kind of
business
nurse I
to
wanna
get
be.
into right now. You know, there's a lot of us. Well, I would still be working if my back hadn't broken apart, and that had nothing to do with nursing. It was something else. So I would still be in there, and I feel bad that I'm not at times. But I'm not sure I could do it. The ones out there now, they need to do more. And I think I told you at this one, and they need to do more than putting signs in front of their hospital and giving them cookies. These people who are dealing with what is going on in the world right now, they need a month vacation to really regroup themselves. And I don't know how you do that when you don't have enough staff. But I just don't know.
Yeah, we could get into staffing issues
No,
all
I'm
day
not
long. We could get into staffing issues, but I think
I think you
that
just
I
have to
know.
be care. You know, make your patients safe, make them feel secure, make sure they're clean, so they can progress on. You know, that's the most important thing. Take an interest in who they are and not what their chart says they are, because you'll find Holocaust victims. They're slowly going away, just like the World War II people are. And once in a while, you'll find a rodeo clown or 18-year-old kid that just needs some encouragement. That's all.
Well, I am deeply grateful for taking care of me, and I'm can't tell you how much I appreciate you spending this time and sharing some extra insights with the guests today. Anything else you would like to any foundations, charities, cancer societies, anything like that you'd like to highlight?
I love St. Jude's Hospital because
Okay.
they were going to take Mark, and he was 21 years old, and they were interested in him because his cancer was so rare. But I love St. Jude's. I love St. Jude's. And any student nursing organization, you know, if you see them out selling cookies, buy them all. Buy them all. You know, support the
We will
ones
do
that are
that.
going
We always
into
want to
that
support
now. Yeah.
we always want to support our student nurses. Well, Barb, thank you so much. And
Okay.
listeners, thank you for being with us today.
Yes.
This, as always, is Compassion and Courage, Conversations in Healthcare. I'm Marcus Engel, and this is the podcast where I get to teach compassionate communication, provide perspective, and inspire resilience. And I cannot thank my favorite nurse, Barb, enough for being with me today. Love you, Barb.
I love you dearly. You know that. All right.
Thanks so much.